This is CBC Late Night News.
Good evening, I'm Talia Ricci. In what has become a recurring story, the city was struck by more gun violence today. 2 separate shootings left 1 person dead and 2 others injured in North York. One community that has seen its share of gun violence in the past is Jane and Finch. Today, it held its annual Unity Barbecue to promote peace and togetherness and to take a stand against violence. Kelda Yoon reports.
It's a joyous event bringing together kids and adults in a community that has seen its share of violent crime.
We always gotten the bad rap. Anytime you hear anything that's in North York, they automatically think it's Jane and Finch.
Tracy Dale has lived here her whole life.
We have to show that the friendship and the community and the family is more than that. It's, more than the gun violence.
For the 10th year in a row, the Unity Barbecue is aiming to do just that.
I just like being here. This is my home.
It's fun here. The kids here are good.
While this is a celebration, it also comes amidst a spike in the number of shootings in Toronto. So far this year, there have been 277 shootings and 419 shooting victims in the city. Record numbers, according to Toronto police data. Just today, an early morning shooting left a 46-year-old Toronto man dead near Finch Avenue West and Weston Road, 2 kilometers west of Jane and Finch. An afternoon shooting left another 2 people injured near Leslie and Finch. And Saturday in the city's Glen Park neighborhood, more than 30 shots were fired, injuring 4 people.
Those here say the community has made a lot of progress over the last 10 years, but that unfortunately it has been stigmatized for so long that it's often overlooked.
Like many here, DJ Ironman also grew up in the area.
Pacific community, we've been good, we've been great, we've been, learning to respect one another. We don't all have to be friends, but respect goes a long way.
But he and Dale say there still needs to be more money invested in programs for youth and in events like this.
Kids need to know that they have these things that, these venues in Jane and Finch, not just picking up the gun and drugs and, getting into the streets. And as you see what happens, it's death. It's either death or jail.
Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
A pedestrian is dead after being struck by a vehicle in Scarborough this evening. Emergency crews were called to Kingston Road and Morningside Avenue around 8:30 p.m. Toronto police said the victim's injuries were very serious and paramedics administered CPR. The victim was pronounced dead at the scene. There was no information on the age or gender of the victim. The driver involved remained at the scene. Streetlights appear to be out at a stretch of Kingston Road. It's not clear if that was related to the incident. Roads in the area have been closed for an investigation. Halton police are investigating the death of a 91-year-old man outside a retirement home in Oakville. Emergency crews were called to the area near Church and Allen around 4:40 p.m. yesterday. Police say EMS found a man on the sidewalk with obvious signs of chest trauma. Paramedics tried to save his life, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The victim has been identified as Edmund Ferrari of Oakville. Officers say the investigation has led them to believe that the incident is suspicious. The homicide unit's taking over. Cops also released a video that shows a car leaving the area shortly before Ferrari was found. They're asking anyone with information to contact Crime Stoppers. One man is dead and another is missing after a boat crash on Stony Lake in Peterborough. 2 boats collided with each other last night around 9:30 p.m. in Youngs Bay. Police say witnesses in the area brought 5 of the 6 people involved to shore. 4 of those people were hurt, with some having serious injuries. A 31-year-old man was pronounced dead on the scene. Officials are looking for another 31-year-old man who's still missing. Police are investigating what caused the crash. Police have arrested a 25-year-old man who allegedly sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl 2 days in a row. The teen was in the McGill Parkette at Yonge and Gerrard Wednesday night when this man allegedly sexually assaulted her and ran off. The next morning, she was in the same place when the man returned, assaulted her a second time, and fled again. The man has been charged with 2 counts of sexual assault. And an update to a story we brought you yesterday. Toronto police have located a CAMH patient who went missing on Friday. 35-year-old Gisha Beza Gisha Kafen was last seen during an escorted walk Friday afternoon. In a statement, CAMH said it notified Toronto police immediately. He was found yesterday evening. Kafen is the 4th patient to go missing from the Toronto Mental Health Treatment Centre in 2 months. 2 teen brothers in Oakville have had a tough year, losing their father and their home in 2 separate tragedies. 17-year-old Trent and 18-year-old Forrest Saville have been living on their own in a hotel for months. Friends and community organizers have come together to help the brothers during this difficult time. Daniel Clark has the story.
He was going to fall, and we were on a tile floor, and before he fell, we caught him, and he lost consciousness pretty quickly after that.
Gareth Lewis was one of Chris Saville's closest friends, joining him last year for a golf trip in St. Petersburg, Florida. Then, a choking incident left Chris with severe brain damage. His eldest son got the call.
I thought it was another phone call, but it was actually a doctor from America calling me to ask for my consent for a procedure on my father. And I didn't know what happened at the time.
The night their father was airlifted back to Canada, tragedy struck again, this time at home.
There was an electrical fire inside the wall, and we're not exactly sure how it started.
They lost everything in the blaze, and after months on life support, their father passed away in April. Gareth, along with a patchwork of community organizers and Good Samaritans, took action, finding them a hotel and starting a GoFundMe page.
He's been helping us with anything that we need, from driving around to money situations, meetings, just everything that I could imagine. And yeah, I don't know, I'm more than grateful, like words can't explain.
At the hotel since November, there too, support has been ongoing.
The hotel staff has just been phenomenal. They've helped us through whatever we've needed. The manager takes home our laundry and does it when she can, which is amazing.
The whole ordeal has brought the brothers closer.
Nobody's here to stop our fights or pick something up for us or do anything for us. So now, instead of yelling at each other, we do it ourselves. Yeah, more or less our relationship is on necessity. We work better as a team, definitely, through this.
They look forward to moving home soon and writing the next chapter of their lives.
Paint some walls, lay down in bed, feel stable, and hopefully we're both looking at schooling and getting jobs, getting back into life in the swing of things. Well, it was our home, not just 3 guys in a house, and I'll hold on to whatever I can that reminds me of my father, and definitely living in that home, I hope I can do him right by taking care of it.
Daniel Clark, CBC News, Oakville.
Marta Churlowicz joins us now for a first look at the forecast. And a beautiful sunny day today, but that wasn't the case everywhere.
No, not the case everywhere, but let's talk about the overnight temperature. I mean, it's the last week of summer. I'm so sorry to say that for people. 16 degrees overnight. The normal is 15, so we're actually 1 degree above normal in Toronto. Let's talk about the precipitation forecast. As you mentioned, not necessarily a sunny day for everyone. It's northwestern Ontario that's going to see a lot of those showers coming from Manitoba. Lots of the prairies washed out. So the risk and the future radar shows those cells coming in through northwestern Ontario, the Lake of the Woods. That's where you could see the potential for that heavy rainfall. Environment Canada already issuing a special weather statement. This is because there could be 30 to 60 millimeters of rain falling through Tuesday, so that's quite a bit. But let's move on to the GTA and southwestern Ontario. Monday looks really nice, closer to seasonal conditions, 23 in Toronto, so very nice. And then a closer look at the GTA for Monday, Peterborough 24. Monday morning starting at 18 degrees. Monday afternoon, 23. We'll tell you more a little later in the show.
Thanks, Marta. It's move-in weekend at some colleges and universities across the GTA as thousands of students get set up in their new homes on campus.
It's exciting and nerve-wracking. I don't know, it's a new city and yeah, new experiences.
It's really hard for me, but I'm really proud of her, super excited for this new adventure and her future endeavors. But I'm going to miss her every day. I'll call her every day, FaceTime her every day. and wear this sweater every time I come and visit.
The big move for students comes a week ahead of when classes are scheduled to start. Ryerson says the week between moving in and starting classes gives students enough time to get used to the campus and the city. On top of getting settled, students had a floor meeting and opening ceremony where they had the opportunity to meet with their new roommates. Classes officially begin September 3rd. The 8th annual Afro-Carib Fest is back in Scarborough this weekend, celebrating culture and diversity in the city.
This event is so important for the community. It's the first of its kind to merge the African and Caribbean culture together. And it's so important because we get to showcase our diversity, our unity. And the great thing about this event is not just the African and Caribbean culture. The Asian community is here, the Indian community is here. We're here to celebrate our colors, our beauty, and everything that's wonderful about the city of Toronto. And we're just glad to be a part of it.
As you're seeing now, there were tons of things for people to go out and enjoy, including food and local retail vendors. There was live music and dance performances, as well as some dance competitions. If you missed this year's festivities, there will be more chances to check it out. The event takes place yearly at the Albert Campbell Square in Scarborough. Although the Canadian golfer didn't win, she was a crowd favorite till the end. We'll bring you to the CP Women's Open a little later in the show. Stay with us. Two years after over 500,000 Rohingya refugees fled their homes to escape violence in Myanmar, local community organizers say the situation in the refugee camps remain dire.
You cannot imagine the pain they've gone through. I mean, even if we see the pictures, it's not the same when you go there and touch them and feel them and talk to them. And it's just horrible. And it's still happening. Nothing has changed. Nothing is, for one thing, the abused are being abused more.
This weekend marks 2 years since hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims fled Myanmar in what the UN called a military-led campaign of violence and genocidal intent. The Rohingya Human Rights Network held rallies against the violence for Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day. Those happened across the country today, including here in Toronto.
So many of our other governments are quiet and not doing anything about it. Since we have some hope in the Canadian government, we want them to take the Myanmar government to the International Court of Law and, make them responsible for what they've done and, give the rights back to the Rohingya people.
Community organizations took to Nathan Phillips Square this weekend to voice their concerns. The group spent time demonstrating and gathering signatures from Torontonians to ask the Canadian government to help. Canada's House of Commons condemned the acts of the Myanmar military against Rohingya Muslims as an act of genocide last September. Anti-government protesters clashed with police again in Hong Kong today. Some officers drew their guns on protesters who were chasing them with sticks and canes, and they tried to disperse the crowd by using tear gas and water cannons. And as Chris Brown reports, the violence escalated even further than that.
Hong Kong streets turned white again as tear gas that burns the skin coated protesters who refused to take down street barricades. When that didn't work, police rolled out new weapons. Water cannons mounted on armored vehicles. All of that ratcheted up the intensity of the violence here, but what we saw on a side street in Kowloon was arguably worse. Riot police confronted what they thought was a small group of protesters. But suddenly, from around a corner, more people showed up and went on the attack. In the rain-soaked streets amongst the chaos, one cop stumbled and fell, and for an instant, it seemed he might be swarmed and beaten. Then, in one of the few times since these protests started, police drew their guns. One fired a warning shot. Others waved their guns at the crowd, including in our direction, as one brave man tried to de-escalate things. And this is where that very scary scene ended, with the riot police taking shelter in this building here. A few minutes later, as you can see, dozens, perhaps scores of reinforcements came banging on their shields to relieve them, but a very scary moment. People here have given up counting the number of rounds of tear gas that have been fired and the number of nights of clashes between police and protesters. Authorities have tried shutting down metro stations so people can't get to the protests, and Chinese regulators have put pressure on Hong Kong companies to ensure their employees stay away, but none of that appears to be working. After a short lull in the violence last week, Sunday night's confrontations were arguably among the worst since Hong Kong's political crisis began. Chris Brown, CBC News, Hong Kong.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and U.S. President Donald Trump had a one-on-one meeting at the G7 summit in France today. There was no hint of acrimony, and both men sang the praises of the new NAFTA deal. But appearances aside, Trudeau faces a big challenge in dealing with Trump, and so do other world leaders at the summit. David Cochran has more.
Justin Trudeau arrives at this G7 as a great defender of multilateral institutions, Donald Trump as a great disruptor. From those different starting points, they seek common ground.
Canadian and American economy are doing well, partially because of the trading relationship we have.
So we're going to be significantly expanding our trading relationship when the USMCA gets done and completed. Our farmers love it, the unions love it.
As neighbors and largest trading partners, they need to keep this relationship positive. But the strains at this summit are showing. American media reports cite anonymous U.S. officials complaining that France is wasting too much time on climate change, gender equality, and development in Africa, calling them niche issues. Trump wants to focus on boosting the economy, even though his escalating trade war with China has slowed growth, sent markets tumbling, and made allies nervous, though Trump doesn't quite see it that way.
Mr. President, are your allies pressuring you to give up the trade war with China?
No, not at all. I haven't heard them. I think they respect the trade war.
Just to register as a faint sheep-like note of our view on the trade war. We're in favor of trade peace on the whole.
But trade peace isn't Trump's style, and that style is changing the way the G7 works. His stance on climate change, for instance, has forced leaders to abandon the idea of a unanimous communique when this summit is over. Historically, leaders sit at this table to tackle the world's biggest challenges. Now, one of those challenges is sitting with them. At Trump's first G7 in Italy, he broke the consensus on climate by making it clear he was pulling out of the Paris Agreement. At his second last year in Quebec, he obliterated the communiqué in a tweet storm from Air Force One. Now in France, they won't even try to forge a consensus. Next year, Trump is scheduled to host. So rather than work in a group of 7, they work in groups of 1s and 2s and 3s to make progress on what they can when they can. Trudeau continues to meet with like-minded leaders on climate and trade. He supports the African development agenda put forward by France. The goal is to show that multilateral organizations can be effective in difficult times. Of course, Trudeau also wants to show that he can be effective in difficult times. That's certainly a message he wants to send to the other world leaders here at this summit, but also to Canadians back home, especially with an election in October. David Cochran, CBC News, Biarritz, France.
Also today, Iran's foreign minister made an unannounced visit to the G7 summit site. To read more on this and our extended coverage on the G7 summit, head on to our website. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Canada's top golfer went head-to-head against the best women's golfer in the world on Sunday, and it looks like Canadian golf fans were the winners. Ontario native Brooke Henderson was looking to repeat her historic win at the Canadian Women's Open this weekend in Aurora. She became the first Canadian to win the national championship in 45 years last season. But this year's victory wasn't meant to be. After stumbling earlier in the tournament, Henderson fought her way into the finals only to come up short to Jin Young Ko of South Korea. Ko is the world's top golfer. But all wasn't lost despite the loss. Given the popularity and large crowds following Henderson, Ko decided to share the tournament's final spotlight with a Canadian golfer.
She has carried the flag for Canada with uncommon grace.
Well, you betcha. These two are friends off the course.
The two champions acknowledged each other's accomplishments despite Henderson finishing in third place. And thanks to this year's finish, the Canadian Open sold a record number of tickets. Marta Cherlowich is back with your extended forecast and hoping for a few more days like today this week.
Well, I mean, you might get it with the heat, but it's going to rain, and I'll tell you when in a little bit. Monday morning starting off at 18 degrees, the afternoon 23, just a little bit below seasonal, which is 24, but the heat's going to build in through the week. Let me tell you about the precipitation forecast, though. Northwestern Ontario, that's where we're going to see some of those severe thunderstorms in through Monday, and the risk is already there. Environment Canada issuing a special weather statement for the areas in white. That's where we could see rainfall amounts from 30 to 60 millimeters through Tuesday. So lots of rain very quickly in through Lake of the Woods and parts of northwestern Ontario. But Monday looks really nice through southern Ontario. You can see temperatures around seasonal, 23 in Toronto, as I mentioned earlier. Tuesday, that's when we see the rain icons pretty much across the board. There's that system that's passing through, and it's going to bring some of those showers into Windsor by Monday, and then Monday into Tuesday, that's when we see all of this rain. So here it is. That's the system pushing in through Windsor, and then Monday evening, Tuesday, you can see it pushing through areas in the GTA and the Golden Horseshoe. Again, some potential for that rain, but the heat is going to come in through Wednesday, 26, 24 in Kitchener, Markham, Pickering, and Burlington, and then some other areas in the GTA as well. So a quick look at the cities around Toronto.
Thanks, Marta. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's a cow in a pool.
Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up.
Earlier tonight in Nobleton, the cow didn't jump over the moon, but over a fence and ended up in the pool. Officials were called to the scene to help get the animal out. After food bribery didn't work, they ended up using a forklift to get the cow out. As you can see, the cow is safe and healthy. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. And as we leave you tonight, here's more sights and sounds from the Afro Carib Fest. Good night.